Here we go. 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in sunny South Florida. It's a beautiful night. Breezes in the palm trees. Big fat tonsils. All righty. Bum bum ba dun dun da dum da da la da 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 dum. Hi, Kathy. Ba dum bum ba dum da dun da da dun dun dun. Jeanette and Holly and Kathy again. Hi, good evening. Hello, Joette. Nice to see you. Dana, Donna, very nice. Very nice to see everyone. It's nice to see the same names. I think I said this before, but last time when we got off, I turned to my husband and I said, it really feels like I'm with friends. It's so easy and it's so extemporaneous, and I really don't plan much for this. I just decide on a subject and get it out on Facebook and then start talking about it. And it's really heart to you too. Hi, Sandy, Donna, Francine, Dana. Very nice. Very nice to see everyone from Canada. Hi, Canada. Hi, North Carolina, Ohio, Newberry, Ohio. So a couple times ago, I was singing that song, da-dun, da-dun, dun, da-dun, 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 da-dun. And it's called The Trout, if you happen to be watching me that time. It was about maybe 2 or 3 sessions ago, so 2 or 3 weeks ago. And it was haunting me because my washing machine, when it's completed, sings that melody. And I knew that I knew it. I just didn't know where it came from. And I said that I looked it up to find out what it was. No. I kind of skipped over something important. I have a lovely client who's a piano teacher and knows classical music inside and out. And I asked her because I really didn't know how to look it up online. I suppose there's a way to sing a melody and then you can find out who wrote it. But then once she told me it was Franz Schubert, that's when I looked it up and looked at the lyrics and when it was written and the little story and the German words. I love to hear it sung in German now. And but the English lyrics are fun because then I have the meaning. So I wanted to give that the right credit where it belonged. It was not that I looked it up. I asked a knowledgeable client of mine who is a piano teacher. So, piano teachers are not like they used to be. My piano teacher was named Cordelia Bly, and she wore little quarter notes. And we went to her house, and she looked like Aunt Bee in that old program. Now I'm Newberry, Andy of Newberry, and she was kind of an old fuddy-duddy is the way we looked at her. And she saw one person at a time. Now, the new technique is you teach. I don't know that this particular piano teacher that I know so well does it this way, but a lot of them see 5, 6 kids at a time. They do it as a class, and then they teach theory. And it's really changed quite a bit since the days that I took piano lessons. And so I'm going to also talk about my past a little bit because today we're going to be talking about big, fat tonsils, and which is what I had as a little girl, actually as a baby, because my tonsils were extracted when I was 3. And I remember the whole thing. I remember them wheeling me away, and I had no fear at all. It seemed like kind of fun to be on a gurney, kind of being wheeled along. I remember saying goodbye to my mother and father in the elevator where they took off and took me to the operating room. And everyone was so nice. The nurses were nice. It seemed like I was in good hands. I felt pretty comfortable until the doctor said, "Here you go." And he put this mask over my head and over my face and said, "It smells just like mommy's perfume." And it smelled horrible. It was the anesthetizing medication that I inhaled. And it was, it smelled horrible. And I remember for that split second, my mommy does not wear perfume, and my mommy would never smell like that. And it felt like he had lied to me. And I really felt like that to me. I felt like, you're lying to me. But it was only a split second, because by the time they put it over my face, the mask, I was out. And then the next I remember is that my throat hurt. My father brought me ice cream, and my parents, that's what they used to do in those. I'm sure they still do it to a certain degree. They give you ice cream. And that felt kind of special, and my parents and everything. And so, yes, indeed, it got rid of my tonsillitis. You bet. Got rid of the tonsillitis. And then I ended up with bronchitis after that. So instead of my tonsils being the little sentry guards to protect the lymph nodes, to protect against the infection going deeper into the lungs, they're gone. So nobody thought about that. And they still don't think about that. So my tonsils were quite enlarged chronically, and because I was getting lots of sore throats. I don't know that it was strep in those days. I don't know that anyone ever identified what kind of infection it was. So I don't know how far that went. I just know that they felt, oh, my hair got messed up here. They felt as though it was a problem. So they removed them. And so they used to call them kissing tonsils. So it did me no service. In fact, I've often said that the tonsils, the real problem with tonsils is that they're, and I think this is a quote from Dr. Robert Mendelsohn. If you don't know Dr. Robert Mendelsohn, do get his books. Dr. Robert Mendelsohn spelled just like the great composer. And I think he's the one who said the problem with tonsils is that they reside too close to the scalpel of the surgeon. So, and I agree, they're too readily removed. They're too easily found and discovered to be swollen and used as an opportunity to remove. And surgeons love to perform surgery. So there you have it. That's where a lot of this comes from. I am not saying that these surgeons didn't believe that what they were doing was good. I'm sure they did, but they weren't necessarily doing good. So then I had my children, and one of my sons had huge tonsils from the moment he was born. He opened his little mouth, his little tongue dropped down when he was crying one day, probably 2 days after he was born, and I could see huge tonsils. They were large, equal in size. They didn't look swollen, or excuse me, they didn't look inflamed. They just looked large. You could see the little crypts. And he had them for a very long time. In fact, when I look at his tonsils today, they still look pretty hefty. And had I taken him to a pediatrician, I'm sure I would have been advised to have them extracted. But those tonsils have actually served him quite well. And what I mean by that is that son in particular, in spite of his tonsils, never had bronchitis. Now, that doesn't tell us everything, of course. But what it does tell us is this, what it has told him, is every time that particular son is exposed to something not healthy. He used to do a lot of landscaping when he was in college in the summer. When he was exposed to pesticides, which of course drove me out of my mind, but his tonsils would swell and his lymph nodes would swell. And so it was an indicator to him that he needed to use homeopathic medicine. Now, in his case, he used Hepar-sulf or Hepar-sulf, 2 words, H-E-P-A, it's actually 3 words, H-E-P-A-R, sulf, S-U-L-P-H, it's short for sulfuricum, and the third word is calcarea. So the full word is Hepar-sulfuricum calcarea, but we always call it, in the world of homeopathy, Hepar-sulf or Hepar-sulf. So he always uses it when it happens to him in a 30th potency. It doesn't happen any longer, even though sometimes he is exposed to things because he's in the construction business. But that's not the remedy I'm going to be talking about tonight, because we're going to the Materia Medica, and tonight we're going to Baryta carbonica. Baryta carbonica. Baryta, B-A-R-Y-T-A, and carbonica. It is carbonate of baryta, barium carbonate, all different ways of describing it. And it's got a lot of interesting information regarding this, because this particular medicine is so well known for enlarged tonsils, whether they are chronically enlarged and not infected, or they're frequently enlarged and infected. The fact is, if they are enlarged and it's kind of a repetitive or chronic, this is generally the remedy we consider first. And I want to read to you a title of a study. It's called A Brief Study of Efficacy of Homeopathic Medicine in Controlling Tonsillitis in the pediatric age group. And it's written by Rajashan. Let's see, do I have the whole name? Oh no, it was published in Rajashan, India, by Dr. Siva Rami Reddy. And it was published in the Journal of Pharmacy and Biological Sciences. So if you were to look this up, you'll find the abstract and all the information on it. But what's fascinating about this is that I looked it up because I studied under Dr. Ramakrishnan some 20 years ago. And what he told us when he was teaching us was that he ran a hospital, segment of a hospital in India, the homeopathic segment, and he had done a great deal of research using Burita carbonicum for tonsillitis, or even just enlarged tonsils. And so his studies have been published as well, or his hospital studies. And I don't believe this is the study because his name is not listed here. I did not read the entire abstract. I did not read the whole study. But it's something that you might be interested in reading. So you might want to take a look at that. And so for those of you who are told that there is no research in homeopathy, it's all, what's the word? Piddle. It's not real. We have a lot of studies. In fact, that's exactly what our materia medicas are. It's the study and the study and the study of all of these medicines through the decades and through the centuries. So it is, and should you be interested, or if you have someone in your family who is concerned about you using homeopathy, go to my website, joettecalabrese.com, and click on the top where it says community. And you're going to have to put your email address in. I'm sorry, we've done that for reasons to protect ourselves. And you will find several pages with plenty of articles and research, and with the links, so that you can do your own reading for your own edification, or for those in your family who believe that there's no study done on homeopathy. I don't put an awful lot of time into it. I wish I had more time to do so. And sometimes the links drop off, so sometimes they're not. We try to keep up with them, but we usually have an intern every year, and we have not had one for 2 years right now. So we have not kept up with those links. But it's important that folks know that there is a lot of research. In fact, should you be interested, the term double-blind, as in double-blind studies, is actually a homeopathic term. That is how we conduct our provings. And it's always with a double-blind setting. So let's get on to Burita carbonicum. It's for swollen tonsils. And here's another aspect of it. Burita carbonicum also has an aspect of non-growth, or growth that's too slow. So if it's a child who's not growing, who's not maturing properly, either emotionally or mentally, or even sometimes physically, and they have enlarged tonsils, it's likely a dead ringer. We can also go further with that. And we can say it's also for the elderly who are kind of becoming childlike. We're not talking necessarily about Alzheimer's or those kinds of diseases, but we are talking about the fact that as people age, some of them become more childlike, and they're kind of regressing emotionally and mentally. So it's a great medicine for the start of life and for the end of life, when there is a childlike aspect of this person. Now, if it's a 4-year-old child who is acting like a 4-year-old child, there's nothing to treat. But if we have a 6-year-old child who's acting like a 4-year-old child, then we might want to consider this, particularly if the tonsils are enlarged. And it's more often, I love this word, habitually swollen tonsils. That makes it a little bit clearer. But it's not just tonsils either. So remember, tonsils are part of the whole lymph system, and especially in the lymph nodes under the ears and behind the, at the back of the neck, and even around the salivary glands and all. There are lots of lymph nodes and glands in here. And so it's all part of it. So it is also for swollen glands in general. So if you see these swollen glands here, and the tonsils or the adenoids, that's another closely related gland, then you know that there's a real good chance that Barita carbonica is going to be your medicine. So characteristics include physical and mental weakness, memory loss, lack of confidence. I did write here, senile dementia. I don't think of it actually. I wrote this it's in my own book, but I don't think of it for dementia so much. Perhaps unless it's just the beginning of dementia, but frank dementia, I don't necessarily think of Barita carbonica. Confusion, bashfulness, distrust of strangers, and grief over varying trifles. The person may feel insufficient or inefficient and unworthy of what they are hoping to claim. Symptoms are worse from cold, damp surroundings, physical pressure, bathing, and when lying on the painful side. It's kind of interesting because we can go through all of these little better for and worse from, etc. But the bottom line is it boils down to specifically perpetually or enlarged tonsils, or tonsils that are enlarged very frequently, whether they're infected or not. So it does not mean that they need to be painful. It does, although they can be. It does not mean that there need to be all of these other mental aspects of this. But if it does, then you've got a little bit better, easier decision to make. And normally what I would do if it were an acute situation, I would use it in a 30th potency, 30C, for example. And I might give it twice a day for enlarged tonsils that were one more acute example. So the child had tonsillitis in February, and then they kind of receded and went away a little bit, or perhaps antibiotics were used. And then in April, they got it again. And then now it's June and they got it again. That is habitual. So when it finally comes to fruition that you've decided, indeed, I'm going to do something, and I'm going to do it homeopathically, and I'm going to eschew the antibiotics and use Barita carbonicum, that's when I would use it in a 30th potency. However, if it's a chronic condition, and we also have a mental aspect, the lack of growth in maturity in this child. The child is 10 years old and still playing with baby toys. The child is 12 years old and is just not reading up to par. The milestones are behind. There's a lack of maturity, or the growth is not there. The body is not even growing. So if you see that, now I would use it in a 200 potency. So I'd use Barita carbonica 200C is the way I would use it. And this is not a protocol. This is just the way how I've used it in the past, and it's acted so well for me. I would use it 200C. And for that chronic situation, I might indeed use it once or twice a day for several days until I saw that the tonsils were starting to perhaps not go down. I don't know that we're necessarily looking for them to go completely down to normalcy, but what we do want to see is that they go down a little bit, and that the discomfort, perhaps the swallowing is more comfortable if it was an acute problem and there was pain, that the pain starts to back off. And I would then take a look at it in about 10 days after using it for that much time, twice daily for approximately 7 to 10 days. Then at that time, I would look at it, if I noted there was some shift, but not complete, I would continue on. And to be honest, I would go probably for another 6 weeks. And I know that is not classical. Classical homeopaths are always afraid we're going to prove a remedy. But I don't see provings of remedies very often. And if we do, then we simply stop. And if you want to know how to do that, you stop using the medicine and you go to my blog called Stop It. That's the title of it. And you antidote. Or you just stop and just take a break. We antidote if the person is suffering as a result of the remedy. We don't antidote if it's just a little uncomfortable. So I'd like to know if there are any folks who have used burrito carbonicum. Tell me. I'd like to, there's someone from Florida. Yep, I had mine out when I was 5. You bet. Yep, horrible. I had my adenoids out. It was an epidemic, not the tonsillitis, the extraction of the tonsils still goes on. And it frightens parents greatly to see that, because they're thinking it's going to occlude the breathing. And can it do that? I suppose it's possible. Yeah, I believe it could do that. But if they're large and that hasn't happened, then I would keep that scalpel away at for as long as possible and employ these medicines. What have we got to lose, right? How much is a bottle of that burrito carbonicum? If we use it in a 30th potency for an acute situation, it's not going to be more than $10. If it's in a 200 potency, it's a little more expensive, a whopping $18. Now balance that out to the cost of the surgery, even if it's covered by your insurance. But how about the cost of your time at the hospital, the suffering that your child has had to put up with, the general anesthesia, the antibiotics? It just adds up and adds up. All the time that you spend in the pediatric office to figure out what needs to be done for this child. So here we go. My daughter's 37 and has always had very large tonsils and gets tonsil stones a couple times. Tonsil stones are different, and this is not generally the remedy we use for tonsil stones, but I think I may have written about that. I've written about tonsil stones on my blog. I believe I have. Yes. Thank you for saying that you love my Materia Medica book. Everyone should have it. Thank you, Sandy, for saying that. Okay. Is there a link for the study? I'm not sure I know what that means. So ask me again, Elisa, so I know what you mean. My husband came up to me yesterday concerned that homeopathy is spiritualism. I lovingly told him that Big Pharma was listed in the Bible as evil. No, it's not even close to spiritualism. Here's the thing. I'm a practicing Roman Catholic. And so I am not New Age. I don't use crystals. I use frank, absolute scientific medicine called homeopathy. The FDA has it regulated as a medicine in our country, in the US. And here's what I always say to those who say that it doesn't stand up to scrutiny against the conventional medicine. I am not saying, and I never, well, maybe I shouldn't say I never have, but I'm cautious now about saying how I feel about modern medicine. I'm very disappointed. I've been very disgusted with modern medicine many times in my life, and when I hear the stories from my clients and students. But there is a place. There's a place because we need diagnostics. And these diagnostics can be very valuable. I think they're used too frequently, and I've said this before, but it's worth, I think, repetition. We do need to know if there is a lump around the breast or in the axillary, and you've gone to a doctor and the doctor has palpated and said, you know what, I think this is a little suspicious. We really ought to check it. Okay, mammogram. I get it. I totally get it. I would personally, I would use homeopathy first before I even submit it to a mammogram. But I can understand why people would use it. If there was a rectal bleeding and we knew that it wasn't hemorrhoids and it was black blood, wasn't red blood, and we had no idea what this was, and the person hadn't swallowed a pin or something, a tack, we might want to have a colonoscopy and find out what's going on. Now I get it. I don't like the fact that it's used as a mechanism for, I believe, filling up calendars of practitioners. We do not need these colonoscopies nor these mammograms yearly or perhaps ever. I've never had either one. And same thing with pap smears. I'm sorry. I know that folks believe that they were so lucky to have that pap smear and catch that particular condition. But I believe most conditions are have symptoms. And we've gone so far one way with preventative medicine. We've gone so extreme that it feels like I need to go to the opposite extreme just to find the middle. We are too much into preventative. Preventative medicine means take every vaccine. Preventive medicine says get rid of all your wisdom teeth before they start causing trouble. While you're at it, take out the tonsils. While you're at it, and we could go on and on. There are so many preventative methods out there that are superfluous and cause, in my estimation, more trouble than what they might cause in the future. So I want to just bring people back home again. Just find the center. Because I believe there's just as much danger in too much testing. Because if you test and you find a little something that you would never even noticed in the past, now we have to treat that. And what if that treatment is not really well substantiated? And there's plenty that isn't. Plenty. So I urge you to just think it through a little bit. Think it through. And if you have children or young grandchildren, do get a hold of Dr. Robert Mendelssohn's books. How to Raise a Healthy Child in Spite of Your Doctor. Excellent book. He was a pediatrician. He also did a number of videos. Actually, he was on television on the Phil Donahue show, etc. Years ago. Yes, I see the thumbs up. People are saying, yes, they know this book. Don't read it once. Don't read it twice. Keep reading it. Because it takes time to get it past our thinking that we need to take our children in to find out whether or not the child is well. What? You can't tell if your child is well? Of course you can. Absolutely you can. You know when your baby's well. You know when your child is well. You know when you are well. But what happens is we take that, we strip that from people and lead mothers and grandmothers and individuals who are not parents to believe that they cannot discern reality. With a little bit of information and with this grand, wild, wonderful internet, you can figure out a lot, an awful lot. What does tonsillitis look like? Let's see. Now look at the baby or your child. Now look at the picture. Child picture, child picture. Okay. When are these tonsil stones? Oh, you can see what a tonsil stone looks like. You can figure this all out. If you find out it's a tonsil stone, and if indeed I've written about it on my blog, you just go to my blog and order the remedy and start taking it. Super easy, folks. I mean, easier than we think. Let's put it that way. I'm not saying it's always easy, but it's easier than we think. All it requires, in my estimation, is guts, spunk, moxie, and some commitment to learn some of this stuff. Yes. Yes, Homeopathy Research Institute website is also a great resource for studies. I go there frequently myself. I love reading up on all the great resources out there on homeopathy. You bet. That's also good. Indication for people who are immature emotionally. Yes, it is an indication, Burrita carbonicum, but we'd like to be able to see something to do with the tonsils, if possible, because there are other medicines. We have Athusa to think about in regards to that. We have calcarb. So there are others as well. Potency and how often for the Burrita carb. 30th potency and acute for, if it's a severe enough and it's, there's an infection, then I would say every 4 to 12 hours, depending on how painful it is and how severe the throat infection is. If not, and it's a chronic condition, then it would be a 200 potency, perhaps twice daily. 6-year-old is home from school today with a fever and swollen tonsils with white spots. I had tonsillitis a lot when I was a kid. So glad you're talking about this today. You bet. And this is not the only one. When we see white spots, then we might consider, anybody know? Especially if there's pain and redness. We're going to talk about that next week too. But if anyone knows, hop in. What do you use for systemic candida? Too big a subject. I will tell you that I don't worry about systemic candida. I'm going to be honest with you, Judy. I don't worry about that is a naturopathic way of describing something that I don't know how to treat. And what I mean by that is, what is systemic candida? Oh, you have leaky gut. Okay, we treat leaky gut. Oh, you have constipation with this systemic candida. Okay, then we use constipation. So you see, we're not looking at what the name of the microorganism is. We're looking at, I'm falling off to the off to a parenthetic here. But what we're looking for always in this method of homeopathy is we're looking for what is the condition, not what could be potentially the cause. Okay, I've been using it on my daughter in 30th potency twice daily and haven't noticed a difference. Hers are really big. And that is a plate. Well, I would start. You didn't tell me how long. That's Buster asking for. Pardon me? It's 8:30. Yes. Buster's telling me it's 8:30. And I am going to have to dash off. Yes, we've used it for autism and delayed development. You bet. Absolutely can be used that. Over stuttering, and I used it for my daughter over stuttering, and I'm using it now for my son's tonsils. Yeah, it's a great medicine. Great medicine. Read up on it. Read my Materia Medica. Read others' Materia Medicas. Read. Yes, I know it's 8:30. I know. It's 8:30. He says. All righty. Let's see. We've used Mercurius. You bet. Mercurius iodatus with great results too. I would have never thought of it unless another homeopath told me about it. Not yet tried Burrito Carbon. Mercurius is a great medicine for the tonsils and for the throat. So is belladonna. So is Hepar sulf. But this one is a very specific one because it's related to maturity as well. And I wanted to make that super clear with this. All right. What food should be avoided? I don't worry about food so much unless there's a frank allergy. In other words, when the person eats shrimp, they get swollen tonsils. Now we say, okay, then eschew shrimp. But if you're wondering if maybe it's gluten, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, instead of going down that rabbit hole, because that will drive you crazy. I'm just warning you, it drove me crazy. It drives my clients crazy, my students. What you want to do is go after what is presenting. What is the condition that is presenting? All right. When do we use high sherry? When do we use it in a 6? Sometimes we use it in a 6. Sometimes we do it that way because we want to use it for a very long time. And I've used it in a 6 potency. Glad you brought that up for maturity as well. Absolutely. I've used it in a 200 and a 6. Thanks for reminding me. All right. Anything that increases their systemic inflammation, sugar, dairy, etc. Well, if you know that indeed it does. So 13-year-old who has the dentist get food out of her tonsils. They are so large. She is ahead of her age, and everyone says she is 13 going on 20. So here's the thing. Watch for that, because a lot of times children are precocious even. They're ahead of themselves in one area, and then in another area, they're a little off. I'm not saying that's necessarily so for your child, but you might see a child who's very capable in school, handles herself beautifully with adults, willing to take on babysitting jobs, all of that. But when she goes to bed at night, she holds her dolls. Not that there's something wrong with that, but you can see a kind of, there's like a little reversion. By 13, you're not holding dolls so much. You might talk about the little stuffed dog that a friend gave you, but holding dolls in order to sleep, that's a little different. So we're looking for something that's maybe a little bit off. All right. All righty. Let's see. Can't find something wrong. Keep looking. Okay. I had my tonsils out at 25 and feel like it was a huge mistake. I've never had another surgery since. Yeah. Once you go down that path and you get hit with the general anesthesia and the antibiotics and then the pain and all the rigmarole that goes along with all of this, and you don't see enough of a benefit, or in the long run, you end up with something more sobering, such as bronchitis frequently, then you start thinking, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. All righty. The pediatrician also asked me to sign an AMA form due to the refusal of vaccines. And thanks for sharing your thoughts about modern medicine. I'm a medical laboratory scientist certified by the American Society of Clinical Pathologists, and I work in a lab test day in and day out, and I totally agree that there's a significant amount of unnecessary testing. There really is. That's the way to put it, significant amount of unnecessary testing. And where's the tonsil stone blog? I can't find it. Oh, I'm so sorry. If it's not there, you know what? Instead of looking at it on the blog, just try this. Joette Calabrese tonsil stones, and try it that way. I'm hoping that I've written maybe for someone else's blog, or in Wise Traditions in the Weston Price Foundation site. All righty. I'm afraid I have to go because I actually have a class right now. And for those of you who don't know or are interested perhaps in joining study groups, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm meeting with a study group. They study for 8 weeks on their own. They do it on Zoom or they meet in their living rooms. And then I come in at the end of the 8 weeks and, pardon me?
Was it belladonna?
No, it's Barita carbonicum. Barita?
No. If the tonsils are red and inflamed.
Oh, red and inflamed. Oh, sorry. Red and inflamed tonsils. Then I start strep throat. Then I start thinking about belladonna. Belladonna 30. Belladonna 30X or 30C. And especially if they're bright red and hot and burning and painful, not hot, burning and painful, and the child can't swallow because it hurts so much, then we go for belladonna. We're going to talk about that next week too, though. Hi from Louisiana, Lisa. I still live in Baton Rouge. Hi, folks. Bye, folks. It's wonderful. Remember, folks, do good work. Not just for yourselves, do good work for others. Make this part of your commitment and this summer and learn as much as you can so that you can be the healer in your world. And with that, I say good night and we'll see you next week. And God bless you all. Bye now.